Okay, are you all sitting comfortably? Michael is now sitting comfortably, so we can begin. Okay, this takes us off in a very different direction to last week. And it starts with this very famous, have you seen this photograph before? Yeah, it's sort of like iconic American photograph.
It was used in John Steinbeck's scripts a lot on the
It has cropped up in a lot of different places. It was taken by a photographer called Dorothea Lange. And how old would you reckon that lady is?
late 20s.
Late 20s. Early 20s is nearer the truth. Early 20s is nearer the truth. She had a hard time of it. What makes that photograph so brilliant is the two children, there's a baby here as well, but the two children turning their heads away from the camera. Yeah, they were shy. But tells you how worried she was, doesn't it? It was January or February. January or February 1936. And jobs were hard come by. And so what they'd decided to do, what she and the children were doing, they had driven out with the last of their petrol to the fields outside the city to pick cabbages and get, like a few dollars for picking the cabbages. But when they'd got out there, and they were, see this little bit of sort of canvas behind them, I've got another photograph to show you a little bit more in a minute. But that was just sort of like up with a couple of posts on either side out the back of the car. And when they got out there, the cold weather got even colder still. And the ground was so hard frozen that they couldn't get out onto the field to pick the cabbages. And so she just didn't know what to do. They were stuck there in their threadbare clothes, in the freezing cold, but there was always a chance that the thaw might come and they could pick the cabbages. So they just had to wait for that moment. Here, the miracle of this photograph, you look at the others, here's another one from exactly, so just like moments or two before or moments or two after, Dorothea Lange would have taken that photograph. You see the baby now? Yeah, the baby's there. You just sort of see the cheek there. But yeah, it's just that composition that makes it. It's a little bit like a Renaissance painting, and the pyramidical structure, ending up in sort of like a celestial Mary or a Jesus Christ at the top. But it's just such a powerful image. And I've used it lots and lots of times, but it's only recently I've discovered who Dorothea Lange was married to. She was married to the gentleman who painted this. So Dorothea was taking the photographs, and her husband was doing paintings of people who were on the move to try and find work. So here you've got a gentleman of senior years who's decided that in lack of suitable employment, I shall follow me the railway track and hope that sooner or later I will come upon a town and a city where a job may be had. Yeah, don't worry, it doesn't end up like depressing like this, it's just the start. So yeah, lonely figures on the move. So fascinating, isn't it? Dorothy is taking the photographs and her husband is doing paintings. And, there were gentlemen walking across the landscape. I like this one. Have you ever done that thing where in the garden you're burning a little bit of rubbish and you might struggle to get it going? You put a little bit of newspaper underneath there and it starts to spark and the flames start to appear. Human nature then kicks in and we just stare at it like that. That is what that gentleman is doing. Yeah. So he's just, sort of just slightly off the roadside. He's got all of his belongings bundled up by him, a few sparks, and he just gazes into the flame in the hope of some sort of brighter future. Dorothea Lange's husband was called Maynard Dixon, and he wasn't just interested in people wandering the landscape to look for work, because at the same time there were other people on the move too. These people. Do you know who these people are?
Native Americans.
The Native Americans, they are indeed, who were being moved to settlements. Yeah, and sort of, like being a land that was theirs was now belonging to someone else. So they were moved to these sort of enclosed settlements. So there's all of these different sorts of migration going on. And Maynard Dixon, who you're about to see, looked like that. His imagination was just captured by that. And these people wandering this vast American sort of landscape. Him and Dorothea lived in San Francisco. And he would always wear his Stetson, so he was referred to as the last cowboy in San Francisco, because that's the other thing that he painted. We've seen lonely people, seen that lonely mother, we've seen the lonely people walking the roads and the railway tracks, but also you have the cowboys who work on the ranches, and when they're checking on the cattle herds, they're on their own as well. So there's something about these isolated figures in these vast, vast landscapes. They were married for 15 years, and whose career took off first? Actually, on the back of that one photograph, it was Dorothea's career that sort of like flourished. And she was sent off on lots of journalistic assignments all over the world, which sort of separated them too much, really. And Maynard, feeling this isolation and the fact that he'd got this sort of empathy with the vast American landscape and these individual people, he wanted to find somewhere else. Dorothy had been called away. He didn't want to go back to San Francisco. He wanted to find a group of people who he could just sort of live with comfortably for a while. And he found that, this is a powerful image, he found that in the Hopi Indians, who were so ingrained in the landscape that they almost looked like part of the landscape. Kind of if you squint, it's sort of difficult to work out where the landscape stops and the wise man or the earth knower begins. See, they're so embedded in that landscape through surviving from that landscape that, they are part of it. Maynard Dixon was fascinated by that. He didn't necessarily understand all of their culture and customs, but it still fascinated him. So he went to live with them. And by going to live with them, he could observe their ceremonies, didn't quite understand them, but could see the importance that those ceremonies held in the culture. 1899, and then he would paint their day-to-day lives. So weaving, for clothing and for tents, for wigwams, such like that. He would paint individual people who he came across for a pretty portrait. But he didn't really do these paintings in order to sell them. He was doing them because he was a painter who had to paint, and he was just looking at people. So to make a living out of his artistry, he started doing graphic illustrations, like that one. And he started a magazine, little sort of paper, pamphletty sort of magazine, that was available to anyone, the Native Americans or the people sort of coming out from the cities. It was printed on very, very cheap paper, and it just told stories, really, of, you know, this sort of like vast landscape and the hardships that people would encounter. This is lovely. It was called Overland. Yeah, and I think you can tell from that image that he just got this way of working with minimal elements to create a composition. Yeah, the raised hand against the flame. Yeah, because that Hopi Indian is in the process of telling you a story. So we've dealt with the people in this landscape, but there are animals too. There are cattle. Look, hunters up above. In just a few lines he can sort of describe one hunter's gesture to another. Now keep quiet, we're near enough, yeah? And the Indians' most important belonging would be the horse. Isn't that a lovely bit of watercolour? Yeah. And you see, it might look like, you know, kind of like it's hot and dry, but once twilight comes and night begins to fall, it can go very cold very quickly. So, what was the main constituent of a Hopi Indian's diet? Back then, there were still herds of them roaming the plain. Here is a Maynard Dixon inky drawing of a buffalo. Yeah, powerful thing, powerful animals. And you know, the Hopi Indians sort of respected the power of that animal. Yes, they hunted them to live off, but you know, there was a regard from them too. Yeah, Maynard Dixon, as you've seen, could work with oils, he could work with watercolours, he could work with ink, he could work in a very controlled way with ink. He could also work in a rapid sketching way. One of these. Coyote. It's an American red fox. It's an American red fox. Yeah, this is a story about an American red fox and a jackrabbit. Yeah, in this country, jackrabbits are called hares. Hares. So yeah, this is a story about an American red fox and a jackrabbit. Okay? There was an Indian wise man, Hopi Indian wise man, with his apprentice wandering through the desert. And they saw an American red fox chasing a jackrabbit. And the apprentice said, "Ooh, that jackrabbit is going to end up that fox's dinner." And the wise man said, "No, today the fox will go hungry." Just as we are, watch what happens. Sure enough, a moment or two later, the hare picked up speed, scattered dust, and disappeared. It escaped from the fox. He was left panting and gasping behind. The apprentice was amazed and said to the wise man, How on earth can you have known that the hare would escape?" And the wise man says, the fox may have been running to catch his dinner, but the hare was running for his life. Okay. So, tale told by a Hopi wise man. Can we translate that into a sort of much more British type of illustration? In this country, we have not got the vastness of a desert yet. They introduce hosepipe bans, you never know, we might reach that point. But what we have got in lieu of that is the wildwood, yeah? And how do we depict? Say hello to the fox. There it is. Oh. But I only realised when I'd sneakily got this off the internet that it's got a copyright thing straight across the middle. So we can't use that. Can't use that. But I can crop the tree out of the image like this. There's the tree, yeah? So that now belongs to us, yeah? So we can work with that. The tree and a bit of bramble. Tree and a bit of bramble. You can't copyright a tree, yeah? So then into that we will introduce the hare and the fox. Okay? Now, ultimately, you're going to be doing this in colour, yeah? But I'm thinking that's for the second half. What we're going to do to begin with is draw it, okay? Lights coming on. Does that make any difference? That makes a little bit of difference. Okay. I'm going to show you how we're going to depict this, but I think the quickest way to distribute these would be to hand a wadge out there. If you could take one and pass on.